Hello and welcome to FinextraTV. I'm Liam Xavier. Joining me today is Professor Andros Gregoriou, Head of Ref at Liverpool Business School, Liverpool John Moores University. Lovely to have you back.
Thank you, pleasure.
So last year, sort of towards the end of last year, we had a conversation around stablecoins, sort of giving the basic top level of what it is. It's changed a lot since. It's gotten more popular, but with that, there's sort of risks around financial crime. Why is it that stablecoins is such a good asset, I suppose, for financial crime?
Yeah, since last time we met, it's roughly $300 billion at the moment, so it's clearly exponentially grown. I think there's various reasons. I think one of the reasons is it's a market maker. So if we look at, for example, when people want to trade cryptos, a conventional way of doing it is doing it via a stable coin rather than trading them directly, because in principle they're less risky and there's more liquidity involved in this. So that's one of the areas that it's growing. Another potential area is obviously on the DeFi exchanges, which is the big player. Through a DeFi exchange, you have to swap to a well-known crypto, and then you can trade that. And obviously, traditionally, that was more Bitcoin and Ethereum, and now that's being taken over by stablecoins in terms of the swap mechanism. In principle, payments are coming into play, and that's another sort of factor as well. So I think all these bits together are coming in, the first two especially, and they're the reason that we have this exponential growth, because the concept is that they're stable, they're pegged against the US dollar, a well-known currency, and therefore they're low or zero risk in principle. So therefore they're taking over these mechanisms, which is a huge part of the crypto market.
And I guess with this exponential change, beyond just the financial crime risks, are there any other risks that you think might come up, or something that could threaten the strength of DeFi?
Absolutely. So for example, if we go through them in turn, so if we look at, for example, the market making, well, obviously that means that if you're market making through a stablecoin, in principle, you're trading for the underlying fiat currency. That's what you're doing. And then you're using that fiat currency to basically get your money back. Now, in principle, you could use the fiat currency, so the US dollar instead of Tether. But why are you using the stablecoin? Because in principle, they're 24/7 traded. That itself creates huge problems because people can trade all hours of the day, and there's issues with things like gas fees and monitoring that. And there's obviously they're going to be traded on a crypto exchange, which regulation-wise is a lot more relaxed than going through our traditional banking system. So you can see the issues of the market making. If we now in turn look at the DeFi exchanges, and again, the stablecoin is the swap, if you like, in terms of you've got a token, and then the token is then swapped for a stablecoin, and then that's traded for money instead of Bitcoin or Ethereum, because again, in principle, it's less risky. Well, the problem with that is that in principle, it's less risky, but you're actually buying the token via the stablecoin, so that token has its own risk associated with it. So it's the misconception that you're lowering risk, but you're not, because essentially the risk is on the DeFi exchange and on the token that you're buying. And of course, again, there's issues with things like liquidity. And we know automatic market makers come in, you buy a token, you swap it for a stablecoin. If those liquidity pools run out, the token isn't worth anything. All these risks are there. In fact, if anything, it's worse because people believe that they're not risky, because it's done via a stablecoin, but it's just as risky as it was with Bitcoin and Ethereum to some extent. So I think that's an issue. If we now look at payments, I think there's a big problem there, because again, in principle, if we go back to Bitcoin was initially invented as essentially a payment mechanism. If we go back all those years, and the idea is that Swift is slow, Swift is expensive. We can trade, we can essentially pay through the blockchain, and it's really quick and it's all transparent. Problem here is that roughly on a Bitcoin blockchain or an Ethereum blockchain or Solana or whichever one you want to pick, you're looking at roughly 10 transactions a second, whereas Swift you're looking at hundreds of thousands per second. So what's going to happen? Well, as this is promoted, you're going to be doing things off the block, and you're going to be splitting these things up. And that's going to create huge issues for financial crime. So I think all these problems are very risky. So I think they're all issues. And of course, I would say the last one, but another big issue is monetary policy. Because we know monetary policy is there independently to essentially curb inflation and to do what they like with the money supply. and also with the interest rates increasing them or decreasing them. We see that every month from the Monetary Policy Committee. Well, if you have this one-to-one relationship, the problem you're going to have is your monetary policy will be less effective. And then, of course, if stablecoins are taking over and it's digital money more than fiat money, well, controlling the money supply isn't going to give you the solution because you've got all these digital sites. So there's a few issues here.
Quite a lot there.
Quite a lot.
But one key thing is the fact that we're trying to fight financial crime. We can't just leave it there. But at the same time, finding that regulation must be difficult because the whole point of DeFi and stablecoins is that it still exists in this world where people are left slightly, not necessarily to their own devices, but they're left alone a little bit more than typical TradFi. Where can the balance be struck?
It's a very good question, and a question we don't really know the answer to at the moment, because obviously you've got financial inclusion. The whole principle of this is through the DeFi exchanges. Anybody can create a token. Anybody can raise finance that way. This is the whole idea behind this philosophy. And in terms of regulation, clearly it needs to be there because of this exponential growth. But then how strict are you going to be? Now, if we take an example and we take the US and we take Tether and USDC. So obviously these are the two most popular stablecoins. They're roughly 99% of the market or so. And if we look at, for example, USDC is heavily regulated by MiCA. And that's a very much, I call it an accounting type regulation, very strict regulation. Yet we saw the deviations away from the one-to-one relationship. Yet Tether, which is under a different jurisdiction, has always maintained that one-to-one relationship. So I think the answer is a very strict regulation is going to impose problems with monetary policy, obviously on the one hand, and also problems with maintaining this stability, this one-to-one relationship. So I think a principles-based regulation is where I think it needs to be. So I think the FCA is proposing this, that will come out early next year, and I think that's the way forward. You don't want too much monitoring because the problem is going to be keeping the stability, but you need some monitoring, obviously, because my worry with this is it's growing because people believe that it's safe. See, people know Bitcoin and Ethereum are not safe. People see the volatility. Here, they have this concept that it's all safe, but it isn't. And financial crime is going to come into play a lot with the stablecoins, as we've seen.
And is there a risk, I guess, if people are getting nervous around the strength of different fiats across the world and running to perhaps different types of stablecoins like commodified or anything that's not tied to fiat currencies, is there more of a risk in those situations than in the fiat-backed ones?
Yes. To answer your question, yes. I mean, obviously, we mentioned in the previous video, right? There's 4 different types of stablecoins. Obviously, there's the fiat ones, which is the ones that we know. So obviously Tether, USDC, and now there's a lot more. And then obviously there's backed against, you might have it against a commodity, gold or oil, for example. You might have it backed against another cryptocurrency like Bitcoin, Ethereum. And of course, you can have the algorithmic one, which is not tied to anything, but it's a computer algorithm where they burn certain tokens to keep the price stable. They're even more risky because in principle, the advantage of pegging against the fiat currency is assuming that the currency reserves are there. You haven't got the volatility of the change in the stable coin, at least. Whereas on the others, you've got the volatility of the change in the commodity or the other crypto. And as for the last one, well, that's a big problem. But so yes, to answer your question, they're even worse. So I think if you are going to go down the stablecoin route, pegged to a fiat currency is the way to go. And to be honest, that is the way the market's going anyway. But yeah, I would say that's definitely the way forward in this principle. Yes.
But it's fascinating, and like anything new, it's sort of popular and then figure out the rules as it goes along, because it's not a perfect situation by the sounds of it. But hopefully down the line we can speak again and have some more optimism about regulating for financial crime. So thanks for joining.
Pleasure. Great to be here. Thank you.